Hello there, guys. So this is a slightly impromptu stream here, but given the speed of events surrounding Keir Starmer at the moment, I thought it was worth to pop in and try and come up to speed with things. And joining me just in the nick of time, as I've gone live, I believe this is Tom here. Hello there.
Hello.
Wonderful. Just turn the volume up so I can hear in my ear a little bit better. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Super. So I was just sort of explaining why I was here to chat to the boys and girls today, and that's things seem to be moving so quickly that it's really uncertain to me how quickly Starmer could end up going at this point. It feels, I've been saying this for a few days now, but it feels very late stage Johnson. Since the last time I spoke to the audience, Morgan McSweeney, Starmer's, big advisor, architect of the election win, responsible for pushing Mandelson as the idea for the ambassador. He's ended up.
He's basically the shadow shogun of the Labour government for all intents and purposes.
He was would it be fair to say that he is like the equivalent of like the Dominic Cummings of the Boris Johnson era?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, yeah. So he's gone, and there had been a number of people within Labour who had wanted him gone anyway. But him going was one of the last cards that Starmer could play. In a way, you can only fire your advisor once. You can only try and use that human meat shield the once. That's not an option anymore. But then today, I think just in the past hour or two, Anas Sarwar, the Scottish Labour leader, has given a press conference where he's called for Keir Starmer to go. Have you seen the press conference, or have you just heard of it? Because I've only just got back in from work a little while ago.
I have seen it, yeah. He basically was, well, it pretty much what it said. Like, he said that he needed to go, that the psychodrama in Westminster was damaging Scotland, and that he couldn't risk another decade of SNP rule that would damage Scotland, in his view. So he wanted Starmer to resign to give Labour a better chance of doing well in the Scottish elections.
Which, I can't argue with that necessarily. It's a bit of a trade-off to think, is the mess of a prime minister stepping down and knowing the hullabaloo of there's going to be a new one, that's obviously a negative in the mind of the public. But then again, Starmer is such a detriment to the party at the moment that surely it can't hurt that much.
Well, according to opinion research, he's more unpopular than Liz Truss was at the height of her unpopularity.
Well, there we are. By the way, I feel obliged, just because we've given a little mention of Anas Sarwar there, to share with you this glorious post from not that long ago, about a year ago. It was great to catch up with my old friend and the UK's relatively new ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson. Now, obviously, Peter Mandelson gets appointed. Labour figures have to go, oh, it's Peter Mandelson. Oh, he's going to do a great job. But nonetheless, I've seen this circulating around since he made his speech to say it's very important that Starmer now goes, which is always funny, especially when he describes him as an old friend. Old friend, me and Mandelson, been friends for a long time. But there we are. You weren't going to get away with that one without me sharing it. We've also had a parade of members of the cabinet tweeting out in the past hour or two support for Keir Starmer. I've been seeing ones that you guys have been posting into a bullet. We've got Ed Miliband, who 5 minutes ago said, Keir has earned the right to deliver the change he has promised and do what he cares about, which is to serve the country. It is not the time for the government to turn inwards on itself. We must focus on delivering the change we promised to the country. Beth Rigby had apparently spoken to Wes Streeting for the Electoral Dysfunction podcast in the past hour, acknowledges the atmosphere is febrile, but tells her that Keir Starmer doesn't need to resign. It has not been the best week for the government. Give Keir a chance. And I'm seeing that with a few of them, that I guess it's being viewed at the moment as like one of the moments of maximum danger for Starmer at the moment. There's literally just been, a pretty big Labour figure come out and say, yeah, I think he needs to go. So now, obviously, he's got some people lining up behind him. Funnily enough, Miliband and Streeting are two of the people that are touted as potential Starmer successors. But for the time being, at least, they're standing with him. Although Streeting, I could just as easily imagine Streeting gives a press conference tomorrow and goes, you know what, I've done my best to stand with the Prime Minister, but it's just become really clear to me that this situation is untenable. There's nothing that can be done. It's with a really heavy heart that I say it's time for you to go, Keir Starmer. I could also see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not overly surprised that the cabinet rallied behind him because most of them are only able to be in the positions they're in because of him. And they are very unlikely to retain those positions if he goes. But the
Well, then
fact that,
that makes some good sense, then, I suppose, doesn't it?
but the thing is, though, is that they think it's a sign of strength, but it's not, because you shouldn't need to do this 2 years into a landslide majority government, because it should be obvious to most people that your position is obviously secure. So the fact that they're coming out and doing this is not a particularly great sign for the stability of the government.
Not at all. I mean, when we have some kind of a scandal or a minister gets caught up in something inappropriate or that they've done something wrong, and we always know that it's gotten to a rather serious point when the Prime Minister gives a statement and says, "I have full confidence in this particular minister." I'm backing them 100% because we always go, all right, there's a 50-50 chance they resign within the next few days now because you've had to come out and say you've got full confidence in him. Obviously, the version of that where the cabinet is having to say we have full confidence in the Prime Minister, that, well, it's exactly as you illustrated. It's not something that ought to be happening, really, is it? If indeed he's in a position of security and strength right now.
I mean, it's become sort of a meme at this point that whenever Starmer gives full confidence to a person, that person's on their way out. Like, he said that the week that Angela Rayner resigned, he had full confidence in her, then she went. He said the same thing about Peter Mandelson, then he went. And then he said the same thing about Morgan McSweeney, and with 100 hours of that, he also went. So,
Well, I've got some bad news then, Tom, because I've got a special scoop that this morning in the bathroom mirror, Keir Starmer said to himself, "I have full confidence in you, Keir Starmer, to be the Prime Minister. You can do this." That doesn't bode well.
no, that doesn't bode well at all.
I'll take a few comments that we've got from the chat here as well. Retro Gamer is here and says, "Hey Swiss." Random Quotes is here with the always loved super chat. Biden was never going to be Bernie. Captain Swiss, thank you. Chris D is here. Afternoon Swiss and Ghost. Frank says, "I'm almost certain that the cabinet will turn on him within a week, as soon as tomorrow, perhaps." Starmer getting the full backing of the board, says Onyx Shockwave. And Retro says Starmer has full confidence in himself. Quite, which is possibly the most damning thing for Keir Starmer right now. All these people with such confidence in him, I think they must be the only ones. I mean, what's the polling looking like for Starmer's approval at the moment? It's really, I mean, you were saying earlier it was worse than Truss, right? It's dismal.
Well, it gets worse if you do international comparisons, which I'll do in a minute.
Oh, God.
But in terms of the raw numbers, his disapproval rating is in the high to mid 70s, and his approval rating is in the low teens. The latest one I saw was he had a 65% disapproval rating and 15% approval rating. That was from YouGov. And in terms of international comparisons, with that latest poll coming out, he's more unpopular than Vladimir Putin, Andrew Windsor, and Donald Trump.
So this is. Can I just say? So this is less popular than actual people who were in the Epstein files.
Yes, Putin's net approval is minus 48. Trump's is minus 45, and Andrew Windsor is minus 49. So he's more unpopular than all three of those men. and it's no wonder why Labour right now is polling in like an average of 18% when that's the facts.
I will say this though. I will say this. Whatever we may say about the polling popularity of Keir Starmer, I'd rather let him babysit than Andrew Windsor. I'll put it that way. If I had a teenage daughter, I'd trust Keir. I think the worst thing that Keir would do would be bore her to death. Don't want to imagine about Prince Andrew. Former Prince Andrew.
Well, yeah, he's not Prince Andrew anymore. He's called Andrew Windsor now because he's had his titles taken off him, which is why I call him Andrew Windsor, because he's had his title stripped.
That's it. He's Mountbatten Windsor, isn't he?
Yeah, full name Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, but I just shortened it to Andrew Windsor because it's tiresome to repeat that over and over again.
Fair enough. I'll do a few more comments here. Apollo TD says, Bridget Phillipson goes on Sky News right now. No cabinet minister volunteered to do that this morning. Onyx Shockwave says, Starmer help me out here, Tom. Can you see this comment? How do I pronounce that name? Bolarte?
Bolarte.
Who's Bolarte?
Bolarte is a funny character she is. She's the ex-president of Peru who was infamous globally for having comically low approval ratings. When she left office, she had an approval rating of 2% and a disapproval rating of 96%. So she basically became a meme of just like, how can someone be that ludicrously unpopular? And people are making the comparison between her level of unpopularity and Starmer's if he continues to stay on.
I'll do a few more comments here then. Apollo says, how much longer are you on Swiss? I think I might come on depending. To be honest, Apollo, I'm not planning on being on for ages here. Maybe another 10 minutes or so, unless events get away from us and we have breaking news of someone resigning during the next 10 minutes we're talking. But more than anything, I realized that events were moving quite quickly, and I thought it would be worth to pop in here and check in and just comment on it now before in another day's time or whenever things have advanced even further, trying to just keep up with it all. But if you're around at the moment, Apollo, feel free to hop on, but it may not be too long today. Unregistered Hypercam 2 says, even I am more popular than Keir. Well, yeah, unregistered Hypercam 2. Wow, that's a nice reference from 2008. Bubbavis says, is this yellow hat journalism? This is me sending subtle, secret messages that after Anasawa gave his speech about how he wants to stand up for Scotland, I am secretly backing John Sweeney in the SNP. That's why I'm wearing the yellow hat today. Let's say that, sure. Have we got any more statements from anyone? Or I'll tell you what. I'll ask you this, Tom, because this is always the fun area of speculation here. Who's throwing their hat in the ring to succeed Starmer? The ones off the top of my head that I could point to are obviously Wes Streeting, Angela Rayner. I keep hearing Miliband being mentioned, but I'm unsure on that one. Is there anyone else we should be keeping an eye on?
Yes, there's a couple of others I can think of. One of the most prominent ones is a man named Al Carnes. He's a new MP who came in 2024, and he's quite growing in popularity because he's a former soldier, and people think that because of the geopolitical times we live in, that's what's needed. And he seems to be one of the few ministers that doesn't get attached to any kind of controversy, so he's seen as somewhat of a bit of a safe pair of hands. Yvette Cooper is rumoured, but I think she's more likely to be an interim leader than an actual proper leader. John Healey is another one as well. He's the defence minister.
Am I right? Yvette Cooper was was it after Miliband went, before Corbyn came in? Was she the temporary Labour leader?
No, that was Harriet Harman.
Yes, Harriet Harman. That was it. Okay.
But those are rumoured ones. I don't know. I think that's it. Those are the only ones I can think off the top of my head. Al Carnes, Yvette Cooper, and John Healy.
What about that new home sec? I can't remember her name, but
Oh, Shabana Mahmood. Yeah, she's
Shabana
another
Mahmood.
one.
Is she one being spoken about as well?
Yeah, she's also another one who's rumored to be running as well. I forgot about her, but yeah, she's another one who could potentially go for it as well.
No special love for David Lammy out there. No big David Lammy support base wanting Prime
I
Minister David
think
Lammy.
that I think that he'll probably be Starmer's version of Oliver Dowden, where he'll basically stick by him to the absolute bitter end, no matter what happens. Similar to
Okay,
what Oliver Dowden did with Boris Johnson, where he
all right.
stuck by him to the very end.
Hey, I can respect that to a degree. Going down with the ship. Sonic fan had said, "Hey, Swiss or Tom, can you please put the link into the bullet chat?" Yes, I did a couple of minutes ago. So if there is anyone in there who wants to jump on for a little while, then they can do. Can I get on the stream? I'll be just below you, says unregistered hide the cam too. Christy says, give it to Lammy till the end of the season. Onyx says, a Weatherspoons has opened in Spain.
Oh my.
And Onyx also says, if not this week, mid-May will be when Starmer goes. Well, I mean, yeah, I'd been thinking for in the recent few days that probably after the local elections would be the final nail in the coffin. It would be the most natural point that people could come together and get that momentum to get rid of Starmer off the back of what's likely to be disastrous results in all the various contests. But it feels as if the timeline has accelerated recently. So I appreciate you're saying, if not this week, then mid-May. Certainly, I think that if this all turns out to be a bit of a busted flush and we're getting a little bit excited over nothing and actually he does cling on for a bit longer, then yeah, I think after the elections in May is still the big danger point for him. Although worth keeping an eye out for that by-election at the end of February as well.
Yeah, Manchester Gorton, or as it's now known, Gorton and Denton, because it merged with a place called Denton. Yeah, that's going to be a Labour loss, a very, very big one. Betting markets have them coming third in that seat.
Oh, I'm assuming Reform first, Greens second, Labour third. Is that how
Yes.
it's been put? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, basically, very close contest between Reform and Greens, with Labour solid third.
I want to say hello, by the way, to Robin. Robin, not only is this this is the first stream of the year where I've had guests on, so hello to my guests. Given that we're doing the Milkies, it's always on my mind who the stream guests of the year are. I feel like it's been a while since I've had you on. How are you doing?
Good. I haven't been on anybody's voice chat, to be honest with you. So don't worry, you're not the only one.
No worries. So have you got any observations or predictions on the fate of Keir Starmer that you'd like to share with us at this time?
Well, it's the last days of Roma, isn't it? Just the pressure just keeps building and building, and I'm getting deja vu. We've done this like at least 2 or 3 times. We did it with Truss, we did it with May, we did it with Johnson. Going back how long they lasted, I'll give it, I don't know, if any ministers start resigning within the next couple of days, I give them a week at most. I'm being generous there. But it's what really got me last night was, whenever he tabled a press conference and then he said an hour later that, no, never mind, I'm not doing it, but I might do it. Depends on how I'm feeling. Like, it's make up your mind, man. I'm sick of it, and it has to end. I am sick of it.
I'd heard that
yeah.
people close to him had said apparently in the past few days he's felt like angry and depressed, or words along those kind of lines. That I mean, keep in mind, I think famously Starmer had considered, whether this is true or not, I don't know, but famously he'd considered resigning as Labour leader after that Hartlepool by-election loss to Boris Johnson's Tories way back when. So it does seem to me that he is the sort of person who might actually consider going if he needs to, but it's getting a little bit late in the day now to be able to claim that you jumped rather than you were pushed. It's getting very pushy.
When it comes to the Mandelson stuff, okay, let's just say it's how the official story is. He says it is. You know, this stuff only just come out, and I'm shocked and appalled by it, and that's when I got rid of him. Instead of it later coming, like, I would have a bit more empathy if that was actually the case. But considering, let's see how many people, both intelligence, both intelligence agencies told you. Who else? It was literally, I think it was a couple of Americans that told him. Some of the EU told him. Like people who were in on the know and knew about Mandelson, and there's photos been circulating since 2019. It's just the media sort of refused to ever acknowledge him up until this point. So he can't act like this is some big revelation.
I think it's the. If I could make this suggestion, I think it was certainly unpopular with some Labour MPs at the time as well. But also there were people saying, what an absolute blinder he's played. Mandelson, that silver-tongued Machiavellian prince, you know, the dark arts man. Send him over to Trump to go wade through all the muck in Washington because he'd fit right in there with all the muck and all the power and the money and all of that dodgy shit. That's Mandelson's forte right there. And as far as he was doing in the role of that, I think he was doing a fairly good job at, you know, kissing up to Donald Trump and all the rest of it, as he was meant to do. The problem, of course, is the release of the Epstein files. And suddenly, as much as people were aware that he had a relationship with Epstein, just more clear-cut, black and white evidence that hadn't been there before comes out and it's in the news. And then obviously much later on, the revelations about him sharing confidential government information as well. So in a way, it was always said it was a risky play to put Mandelson in there. And the problem with doing a risky play is that if it doesn't, you know, any gamble, you win or you lose, and this very much ended up being one that they lost on.
I don't understand why people.
Sorry, who wants to go first?
You go first, Paul.
All right. I don't understand why people always put that sort of claim forward about Mandelson. Like, this is the thing that has angered me to no end about the whole Labour policy towards America since Trump got in, is that for me, their policy is the definition of cowardice and appeasement. Because that argument of, oh, we'll put Mandelson in because he's corrupt, they're corrupt, therefore they'll get along well with him, is beyond stupid because, one, rewarding corruption is not a win, especially if you are a person who claims to want to bring politics back to service or to restore standards in public life, as he claimed he wanted to do. And also whining and complaining about the threat of to democracy from political parties like Reform, whilst promoting corruption, which is inherently anti-democratic, is ridiculous. But also on top of that, the policy was a complete failure. What did Britain gain from this constant sucking up to Trump? Nothing. Tariffs, insults, mocking and degrading the deaths of soldiers in the wars that UK forces fought on behalf of the US. And overall, an incredibly antagonistic relationship between Washington and London. There was nothing gained from it at all. As happens with all forms of appeasement, you never win by doing appeasement ever. The All that happens is the appeased party just comes back for more and more and more because they smell weakness and know that they can get more concessions from you if you're so afraid of them. It was a stupid policy that didn't work, and all it is it's in many ways just perfectly emblematic of this entire government. Come up with a dumb idea, follow it through to the very end, waste your political capital on it, and get nothing back when it eventually implodes on you. It's just ridiculous arguments.
Here, here. I'll come to you in a second, Robin. I'll just read out a
Yeah,
few
that's
more
fine.
comments we've got quickly. Onyx says it says so much of Britain's political class that the last PM to serve a full term is David Cameron. And boys and girls, for your recollection, that was 2010 till 2015, over a decade ago, and countless prime ministers ago. Frank says Swiss Guardian exclusive Reina Falida website went live briefly in January. This is reminiscent of late stage Johnson, because you had the same thing with Sunak, didn't you? Apollo says, at what point is streeting tainted by remaining in Starmer's cabinet? Boris resigned from May's and Sunak resigned from Boris. And Bittersweet says, so now that we know evil pedo elites do in fact rule the world after all, the real question is, do we owe Alex Jones an apology? I'm not going to be apologizing to Alex Jones. What's that thing about broken clocks?
Well, also, hasn't Alex Jones basically tried to downplay the Epstein files massively because he's in Trump's cabinet? Well, not officially in the cabinet, but basically in the MAGA camp now.
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? That quite a lot of the voices that were pushing this whole the world is ran by a secret cabal of paedophiles, quite a fair few of them are now. It's mixed. It's a mixed bag. Some of them are still very much cozying up to Trump and MAGA. Others have started to split away, and they said we're absolutely shocked and appalled at the fact that they've dragged their heels on this Epstein stuff and all the rest of it. But no, it's interesting, to say the very least. Sorry, Robin, were you going to come in with something a moment ago?
It was a bit of a tangent, but I was saying how if you think about just this model of taking all together, the butterfly effect. It was rumored, I think at the time, that Starmer wanted to appoint Osborne. If that happened, he wouldn't be in the shit show he is now. Well, he would still be in low polling, but he wouldn't be embroiled in this entire scandal. And the whole, I read a stat last night that blew my mind. In the 20th century, there were 20 PMs. We're 26 years into the 21st. We are almost on our 9th PM. Deep that one.
Did we just look at Italy and go, yeah, that looks like how we want to do it. Let's be Italy. Let's just change it constantly.
Similar thing has happened as well, to be fair, in Japan since World War II, where ever since their lost decades began in 1993, they've had more prime ministers since that happened than they've had in the entire, post-Meiji Restoration period. I think this is just what happens when countries find themselves in long-term economic stagnation that doesn't seem like it ever comes to an end. People, you get a government in or a new prime minister in, they promise the earth, they fail to deliver, the stagnation continues, people get frustrated and want them out, they get kicked out, another one comes in, and the cycle repeats itself because the party in power and the much of the political elite don't actually want to solve the reasons as to why the economic stagnation is happening in the first place, because the solutions to it are either too politically or economically painful for either them or the population to endure, or they just have no incentive to do it because it leads to a loss of power and economic and political, and a loss of legitimacy. So they just maintain the status quo and give people false hope through rotating leaderships.
I'd like to add one point to what you said there. I'm not disagreeing with the majority of what you've said. Besides, as far as it goes, them coming in and promising the earth to people, it made me think that what a sorry state of affairs we're in. That actually, I don't think Starmer, maybe like a Boris Johnson type. Oh, Brexit's going to be great, and we're going to have the best year ever, and blah 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 blah. Starmer came in, and the expectations I think were already low. The expectations were very much just, it's been a shit show with the Tories for the last few years. They've been chopping and changing leaders. Now it's time for a bit of stability and normalcy and boring regular governance. And we couldn't even have that.
Well, to be fair, Starmer did say in his big manifesto that he promised change, but the only thing that seems to have basically changed is the colour of the government. But otherwise, everything else is the same. The same policies, the same scandals, the same psychodrama, the same chaos, same everything. The only thing that really has changed, and in hindsight, well, I say hindsight, but I said at the time this is what the election was, is the election was not really about let's have a different government. It was more of an election of what's your favourite colour, red, blue, green, yellow, or cyan. That's essentially what that election was in hindsight. Not really any actual change of government, just a change in the colour of the government from blue to red.
I will look to wrap up fairly soon because I didn't want to go on for ages with this stream. I asked Tom a short while ago about some of the runners and riders for the successor for Keir Starmer. I'll put the same question to you, Robin. Is there anyone that you think is a good bet who's going to succeed him? Anyone that you'd like to see succeed him? And I'll read out some comments to the same effect as well, guys.
Well, I think Straighten and Rayner, I think that's pretty much a given. I've been having trouble trying to come up with a third one. I can see Kern's throwing his hat into the ring, but he gives me just all pure vibes, sort of a Dan Jarvis, Clive Lewis, sort of Rory Stewart. You know that third candidate that gets like between 5 and 7% or something like that. Like it gives me that sort of vibe. Even though I don't know much about him, I know from what I've heard he's pretty competent, but he seems just pretty obscure. Even with Labour members, he seems pretty obscure. So I think he might throw his hat in there. I actually don't think Miliband will, mainly because he's sort of already had a bite at the cherry, and he doesn't seem like he would go back for more. That and I can see him probably getting a job as say I don't know if it's one of the great offices, whether it's Chancellor or Foreign or Home or Defence or whatever, but I can see him in one of those. I can't really see him as PM.
Of the names that had been sort of floating around in the past month or two, probably the one that I was most keen on, and don't get this confused for full-throated support, but of the ones I'd heard of, was probably Andy Burnham. And obviously, it's not going to be Andy Burnham. Starmer made sure of that. I've got a soft spot for Miliband, but I do agree with you. I'm not entirely sure whether he wants it or how successful he'd be with it anyway. But yeah, it's probably going to end up being Rayner versus Streeting, isn't it? Those will probably be the two camps that end up clashing.
In that case, I would have to reluctantly back Rayner, even though, right, every one of the candidates so far is a poison chalice in some way, because Streeting, he'll be painted as continuity Starmer because of his links to McSweeney and then Mandelson and then Starmer himself. Rayner still has to wait on the whole HMRC report coming back.
To be honest, a part of me,
yeah.
I was going to say, a part of me honestly wonders if anybody in the cabinet will actually end up being the PM, because a part of me thinks that it won't be a cabinet member, but rather a backbencher who will end up being PM. Because the reason I believe that is basically because the more they stick with him, the more they become connected to his failure. It was the same problem that Boris Johnson ended up having, Boris Johnson's cabinet ended up having in the end, where they all stuck by him so much that when it came time to fully resign and back down, it all fell apart in the end, and they didn't. And a lot of them that were seen as leadership contenders ultimately failed to become the leader because they were just too connected to him in the end. And it seems to be going the same way with the rest of the cabinet at the moment. Rayna, in particular, I think the more and more she backs Starmer, the more and more damaged she becomes. Because it's getting to a point now where every time he seems to be on the rope, she will come in and save him. So it may get to a point where Labour members will go, "Why did you repeatedly say when Starmer resigns?" Many Labour members will go, "Why did you repeatedly save him in dire straits when we could have got rid of him ages ago, but you constantly rescued him from the brink?"
It's that trade-off, isn't it, between not wanting to appear that you were plotting to succeed him, but then in doing so and being publicly supportive, like you say, then you get the blame for going, well, you stuck with him too late. I want to take a few more comments that we've got in the chat here, guys. So Onyx makes an interesting point. 37 days until Starmer's term overtakes Sunak's term. This is probably the most exciting thing for us to keep track of over the next few weeks, whether or not Starmer can last longer than Sunak did in office. Blue Guy says, Ed Miliband comeback incoming. Christie says it was the lowest electoral turnout since 2001. Probably would have been lower than 2001 had Farage not returned on the eve of the election. Speaking of the 2024 election. Apollo says, Al Khan's for PM for me of the Labour lot. If it's between Starmer, Rayner, Streeting, I'd rather keep Starmer. Dr. Richmond Awesome in Bed says, we all know he will be replaced by an interim leader for a year. That leader will be replaced with Burnham. Onyx Shockwave says, oh, that's an interesting thought, I suppose, isn't it? Maybe we get a new leader. Maybe things don't pan out. Maybe Burnham does get his chance in the sun at some point. Onyx Shockwave says, imagine if we actually did get chaos with Ed Miliband. Blue Guy says, bring back Corbyn. Now there's a dark horse for the future Labour leadership race. Christie says, Mike Cain for PM, just so I can shout, it's Cain, a la Jim Ross. By God, it's Cain. Bittersweet says, I'd choose Clive Lewis, but I can't see him ever getting in. A, because of the fact he's on the genuine left, and B, because his name recognition isn't that strong. And then follows up with bring back Gapes. Well, we're really having a nice little stroll down memory lane here from the 2010s Swiss content with our Corbyns and our Gapeses. Guys, are there any final things you'd like to say before we wrap up for today?
Well, First needs to pull her finger.
Sorry, you were breaking up a little bit there, Robin. Can you say again?
The Welsh First Minister needs to pull her finger out and get on with it.
Follow
the Scottish leader's lead.
Yeah.
They're not. No, I don't really have much else to add. It just seems that, apparently, by the looks of it, this was something that Anas Sarwar did on his own and doesn't seem to have gotten backing from anybody for doing it. So I get the feeling that Sarwar will probably be gone come May, probably along with Starmer as well, because he badly miscalculated this by the looks of it.
I mean, if I take your point, if this was the beginning of a big coordinated thing of a number of people resigning to try and get rid of Starmer, we would probably have expected to see another one happen by now, or at the very least before the end of today. And so far, that's not happening. So maybe the lesson learned from today is that I did get overexcited that Starmer was immediately going to go after Anas Sarwar said it's time for him to go. But you can't blame me. You had the whole cabinet tweeting that they've got full faith in the Prime Minister. What's a person meant to think? Oh well, we'll be back here, ladies and gents, boys and girls. Don't you worry. We'll be here for continuous Starmer resignation speculation until it happens, and it will happen. As the thumbnail on this stream shows, the man his foot has left the edge of the cliff now. He is suspended in midair. It's when does he plummet to the bottom? Blue Guy says Starmer is trying to separate himself from Westminster ahead of the Scottish elections. Well, I can't blame him for that. Certainly, the state of Westminster is absolutely going to drag them down over in Scotland as well.
I think, honestly, as I might have said earlier, a lot of it is probably just extreme frustration on his part, where he was so utterly convinced after the general election that he was guaranteed to become First Minister of Scotland when the Scottish Parliament elections happened. And thanks to Starmer being absolutely terrible as Prime Minister, that dream has ended for good, and he's now going to deliver the worst elections for Scottish Labour in their history and come a solid third, maybe even fourth place if things carry on getting worse, behind Reform, the SNP, and maybe even the Green Party.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, guys, we really are going to have an interesting night when these elections happen in May, aren't we? I will definitely book that off work. I know I'd said to the viewers I wasn't sure if I'd be doing the by-election on the night at the end of this month, but I will absolutely make sure that I can come and live stream the elections in May. So put that in your calendars. Right, final few comments. Liberty Prime says Starmer is the win it on the arse of politics. He's just hanging on, but we all know he's shit. Blue Guy says Gapes Corbyn coalition. My God. Never more tension in the room since Blair and Brown with them two. And I've got something to say. Vote for the rich at the local, says Dr. Richmond Orsenbed, and Onyx says milk. And with that, guys, I will leave it for today. So I'd like to say a big thank you to Tom and Robin both for coming on for a little bit of Starmer speculation. Keep your eyes peeled, guys, because it's a fraught time. If it's not today, it could be tomorrow. If it's not tomorrow, it could be next week. If it's not next week, it could be the locals. But sooner or later, I think we're getting ourselves a new Labour Prime Minister. All right then, guys. Say goodbye. Sign yourselves off.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Adios.